Tracing India's legacy, place names in colonial and post-colonial New Zealand. Imagine for a moment you are standing in the heart of New Zealand, surrounded by its stunning landscapes and diverse communities. You might wonder, how did this place get its name? What's the story behind these names? And how do they reflect the history and culture of this nation? Well, the act of naming places serves a crucial purpose. It distinguishes one place from another, giving each location its unique identity. It's about creating contrast, marking territories, and crafting a narrative. This narrative is deeply intertwined with the people who name these places or for whom the names are given. Now, consider the frozen continent of Antarctica. There, place names aren't bestowed by local communities, but by legally constituted entities of countries that are part of the Antarctic Treaty System. It's a place where no well-organized human communities reside, so naming is straightforward. There are no conflicts or differences. Now consider the frozen continent of Antarctica. There, place names aren't bestowed by local communities, but by legally constituted entities of countries that are part of the Antarctic Treaty System. It's a place where no well-organized human communities reside, so naming is straightforward. There are no conflicts or differences to contend with. But in modern societies, especially in colonial and post-colonial settings, naming places can be far more complex. Achieving consensus is challenging, and even when it appears to be there, underlying conflicts often lurk beneath the surface. Now, let us dive into New Zealand's rich history. Before the arrival of European settlers, it was a monocultural society. However, colonization transformed the nation, bringing new cultures and new ethnicities. Today, New Zealand boasts an ethnic profile that includes Europeans, Maori, Asians, Pacific peoples, and others. It's a diverse tapestry. Most place names in New Zealand are either European or Maori, with many introduced by European settlers or explorers. During the colonial era, Maori names were often replaced by British names, a trend that continued into the post-colonial period. However, over time, New Zealanders began to recognize the unfairness of this practice and started reconsidering it. This underscores how colonial encounters had the power to reshape indigenous place names. In places where colonizers and the colonized coexist, place names can take different meanings for different communities. This can be a complex and sometimes painful situation. In New Zealand, discussions have arisen regarding bilingual place naming, reflecting the diverse perspectives within the country. Now let us shift our focus to Indian place names. Interestingly, most of these names are not a direct result of Indian influence, but rather a reflection of British imperial connections. India was often referred to as the jewel in the crown. During the height of the British Empire, early British settlers who had lived in or were born in India were brought with them the practice of assigning Indian names to streets, places, and geographical features in New Zealand. Some Indian place names in New Zealand commemorate significant events such as wars and conquests during the British Raj in India. Additionally, names of British administrators, civil servants, and army officers who played pivotal roles in the British Empire's development are prevalent in New Zealand's toponymy. This practice, though, challenges the assumption that place names should reflect the history and narratives of the local people. In most cases, not many Indians lived in these places, and these names aren't typically chosen by Indians. For many Indians today, the presence of these names is a delightful surprise as they encounter them where they least expect. But for early British settlers and their descendants, these Indian place names represent a narrative that isn't shared by the Indians who now call New Zealand their home. The British individuals celebrated in these place names their connections to India during the days of the Raj, and the events and exploits that led to these names all hold different narratives and identities in people's minds. So, in a multicultural society like New Zealand, place names can carry a multitude of meanings for different people. While they may evoke feelings of jubilation or remind some of subjugation, most Indians are favorably impressed and delighted to find traces of their own country scattered across the map of New Zealand.